Hi, Wendy. I am so excited to talk with you today.
Hi, Lisa. Me too. I'm happy to be here. And as we mentioned in our last conversation, today we're going to dive more deeply into the self-command muscle and actually how to build it. Let's start first with some brief introductions so people know who we are. I'm Wendy McManus. I'm a leadership coach with Connect to Potential. I focus on drawing out the true genius in my clients so they become more confident, capable leaders who create stellar results.
I so see that in you too. And I am Lisa Brewer, a leadership and life coach with Lisa Brewer Coaching. And I focus on helping my clients clarify their vision and then develop the plans, skills, and behaviors that help them to get there. And as a result, their courage and their confidence and their joy just blossoms.
Wow, that joy blossoming. I can feel that energy coming through the screen.
Yeah, it's wonderful to watch. So to ground our conversation today, let's do a little bit of a review. And listeners, you can listen to last week's conversation if you really want to understand a little more detail. Mental fitness is the capacity to listen to respond to life's challenges with a positive instead of a negative mindset. And the benefit of this is better performance, improved relationships, and more peace of mind. There are three muscles that need to be developed in order to increase our mental fitness: the saboteur interceptor muscle, the sage muscle, and the self-command muscle.
So that self-command muscle is what helps us shift from saboteur to sage perspective, which is another way of saying our self-command muscle enables us to interrupt our automatic thoughts and behaviors so we can actively choose our response. It's like switching off the autopilot in our brain.
Yeah, and we have all been there. I used to stay on autopilot when responding to my husband's anger and frustration by getting angry and defensive myself. And what I found is as I've strengthened my self-command muscle, I've been able to see what's really causing his reaction instead of immediately assuming that he's criticizing me.
Yeah, what a big difference that makes. And so what I'm hearing is that you've learned how to switch off your autopilot so you can choose to explore what's really going on.
Well, I'm not always as quick at turning off my autopilot as I would like to be, but I'm getting better. Building the self-command muscle is really an ongoing practice.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's ongoing, but it's not a hard practice. And to show that, we're going to give a short demonstration of how to build this muscle. And then later on in this conversation, we're going to provide a longer workout so that you can see some different approaches. Sound good?
That sounds great. And before we get into it, I want to highlight how easy this is. We're simply going to focus on one single physical sensation and let go of our thoughts. Your mind is going to wander. That is perfectly normal. When you notice that happening, simply bring your focus back to your body and let go of your thoughts. And every time that you bring your attention back to your body, it strengthens your ability to catch yourself when you're going on autopilot.
Yeah, that explanation is really helpful. And so we're just going to do this right now. If you like, you can close your eyes, but you're going to want to be able to see what I'm doing here. But in between my prompts, you can close your eyes. Let's start by just rubbing together your thumb and your forefinger with such attention to detail that you could feel the fingertip ridges on both fingers. Let go of any thoughts you're having and just feel that sensation. Now let's try a different one. I want you to take the fingertips on one hand and gently rub them across the fingers and palm of the other hand. Let go of your thoughts and just really focus on that physical sensation. Now we've done this for about 20 or 30 seconds now. We call about 10 seconds of this focused attention on a physical sensation. We call that one rep. So when you hear us talking about a rep, that's what we're talking about. The more reps that you do of the exercise, the stronger the self-command muscle gets.
Yeah, it's like lifting weights. The more reps you do,
Yeah.
the more you grow your muscles. But unlike weights at the gym, you want to sprinkle these exercises throughout the day and do them every day.
You know, that lifting weights analogy really works here. And, you know, going even further than that, I think it would help to talk about the neuroscience that's behind the self-command muscle so people can understand why it works and how it works.
I agree. So here's a simplified version of how neural pathways are built. As we experience an event, it's like the neural pathway hits a fork in the road, and we can respond with either the saboteur perspective or the sage perspective. Over our lifetimes, we tend to build habits of thought and well-worn pathways that may favor a saboteur response.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in very challenging situations. So for many of us, that saboteur or negative mindset response has been built up so much that it's like a 6-lane superhighway in the brain. Meanwhile, the sage response to that challenging situation may have turned into a rutted dirt road. And in this scenario, the saboteur response literally becomes the path of least resistance in the brain. And that's what makes the thought and the behavior so habitual.
Yeah, those analogies really help me make sense of what's happening in the brain. Of course, it's a simplified version, but it makes sense, right? And as our self-command muscle grows, we're more able to choose our response. Every time we choose a sage response, it's like we're bringing in a construction crew to tear down the saboteur neural pathway and build up the sage neural pathway. And over time, that makes it easier for us to act from that sage perspective in the future because we've got that construction crew coming in.
I love that construction crew analogy. It is so appropriate. What I've found is that if I do 2 to 3, 10 to 12 minute self-command exercise sessions a day, it's amazing how much choice I have in my responses. But when I go too many days without this discipline, I notice my reactive autopilot response really starts to increase.
Well, Lisa, as usual, even though we have similar training, we take really different approaches to these things. My practice is really different. I build my self-command mostly in 1 or 3 or 5 minute increments, but I do it a lot more often throughout the day. So I take a really different approach.
And the beauty is that just shows how flexible these exercises are to use.
Yeah, for sure. I have an example here. I pay attention. I notice when my stress goes up. And right when we were starting to record this session, I couldn't hear you. And I didn't understand why. I had everything I thought set up exactly the way it always is when we record these sessions, but something was messed up in my audio settings and I could feel my tension rising. I didn't know what the solution was. I could kind of start to feel that grip. But I paused, I did a few reps. It helped me keep my head in the game so I could get in there and solve the problem. It was an obvious solution, but when I was in the grip of that tension and stress, I couldn't see it.
Yeah, such a great example because it's in the moment. And that's when these come in really handy. I mean, if you're really hijacked, then just taking a couple of seconds to pause on this makes such a huge difference. And so I think this is a great time to bring people through a longer session to see what it's like to really build their self-command muscle.
Go for it. I'm looking forward to this. I really want to hear your approach. I'm sure it's going to be a little bit different from mine.
Yeah, everyone does this a little bit differently. When we're first strengthening our self-command muscle, it's easiest to do this with your eyes closed. So I invite you to close your eyes now as long as you feel comfortable and you don't need to concentrate on what you're seeing. I'm going to close my eyes too. So let's start with just a few deep breaths. So take a nice deep inhale and a long exhale. And another deep inhale And a long exhale. And if you're noticing your mind wandering, just bring it back to the attention of your breath. Another deep inhale. And a slow exhale. Now, really notice all the places that your body is contacting your seat. Really pay attention to the pressure points, the weight of your body on your seat. There's so much sensation here. And if you notice your mind wandering, just bring it back to the sensations of your seat. And now, notice the weight of your feet on whatever they're resting on. Notice all the pressure points. Does it feel different on the top of your foot versus the bottom of your foot? If your mind wanders, just gently bring it back. And now, see how many of your toes you can find. You may want to wiggle them. See if you can sense as many of your toes as possible. As your mind wanders, just gently bring it back to your toes. And now, shift all of your attention to your arms, hands, and elbows, and notice the weight of them on whatever they're resting on. Really notice the heaviness. And now, shift your attention to your face. Notice whether you have tension held in your face, maybe in your jaw or your brow. Just really pay attention to all the sensations in your face. And as your mind drifts, just gently bring it back. And now, notice all the ambient sounds that you may not have noticed before. Now, notice the farthest away sound that you can hear. As your mind drifts, just gently bring it back. And now pay attention to the closest sound that you can hear. Now, if you haven't already heard your own breathing, pay attention to the sound of your breathing. Now place your hand on your stomach and really pay attention to the sensation of your breath as you breathe in and out. Notice how your hand rises and falls with each breath. As your mind drifts, just gently bring it back. Now I invite you to open your eyes and join us again. So I
Nicely
see
done.
this huge sigh. How do you feel now, Wendy, and listeners, compared to how you felt before the exercise?
Yeah, I noticed that at the beginning of this, I felt pretty good, but I was holding myself pretty fairly tensely because we're in the middle of recording this session. I want to make sure that we get it right. And now I just feel calm and light and powerful, like I could do anything.
Yeah. That's the power of this work. It actually shifts our mind from the saboteur mindset into the sage mindset. And while this was a very short session, over time, these changes actually show up in the gray matter, and it can be recorded on fMRI machines that there's actual changes to our brain by doing these exercises.
Wow. Well, nicely done. Thank you for guiding us through that. And there are so many ways to sneak these in during the day. Lisa, you mentioned that you do longer sessions. I tend to do shorter sessions. My longer sessions tend to be that on my daily walk, I practice self-command by focusing on my feet and my legs as I take each step. Or sometimes I will listen to all of the different sounds that I can hear. And again, I just keep reminding myself, let go of your thoughts, come back to the body. Let go of your thoughts, come back to the body.
Yeah, and I sneak them in during the day when I do things like washing my hands, and I
Mhm.
notice what the water feels like and what it feels like to have the slippery soap and the rough towel. So there's just so many ways that we can do this. And so
Great.
we're coming to the end of our time, and I want to let our listeners know that during our next conversation, we're really going to focus on the saboteur interceptor muscle, how to build that, and we're going to introduce the judge, which is the saboteur that we all have.
That is going to be so powerful. It sounds really good. And until next time, we encourage you all to find opportunities to do self-command exercises throughout your day, especially during a stressful situation. And let us know how it goes.
Yeah, and if you want to get in conversation with us, you can find Wendy at connecttopotential.com.
And you can connect with Lisa at lisabrewercoaching.com.